Chitty had always believed love was enough. For 2 years he and Adora built dreams together, talking about marriage, a small home, and a shared future. He adored her confidence and beauty, and she loved his passion for design. Or so he thought. One quiet evening, she sat across from him, her eyes cold and distant. "Chitty," she began softly, "I can't keep doing this. I'm going back to Tamawa." The name hit him like a slap. Tamawa, the rich ex who'd just come back from London. Chitty's heart sank as he searched her face for a sign that this was a joke, but she looked serious, even relieved. He tried to speak, but his throat tightened. "Why?" he finally managed to whisper. Adora sighed, her tone almost pitying. "You're talented, Chitty, but talent doesn't pay rent. Love can't pay bills." Those words cut deeper than any insult. He felt small, invisible, like his dreams meant nothing. The woman who once cheered for his designs now looked at him like a failed project. She stood, gave him one last look, and walked away, leaving his heart shattered on the floor. The silence that followed was heavy. Chitty sat there, staring at the empty chair, his hands trembling. Memories of their laughter, their late-night walks, their whispered promises, all faded into a cruel echo. That night, he lay awake, her words replaying over and over. "Love can't pay bills." Each time he heard it in his mind, the pain deepened. He looked around his small apartment, his unfinished sketches scattered on the table, and felt a wave of shame. Maybe she was right, he thought. Maybe dreams were for fools. Tears he didn't know he still had burned his eyes. The woman he loved chose wealth over him, and it made him question his own worth. For days he couldn't eat or work. Friends called, but he ignored them. Every sound reminded him of her laughter. He felt like he'd lost not just love, but purpose. But deep inside, a quiet spark still lived, a small voice whispering that maybe, just maybe, this pain wasn't the end of his story. Days turned into weeks, and Chitty barely left his small apartment. The blinds stayed shut, his computer gathered dust, and his sketchpad remained closed. Every corner of his room reminded him of Adora. The mug she once used, the picture they took at Jobby Lake, her laugh that still echoed in his head. He replayed her words every night. "You're talented but broke. Love can't pay bills." They haunted him like a song he couldn't stop hearing. He started believing maybe she was right. Maybe dreams were just foolish hope. His friends tried checking on him, but he avoided everyone. He stopped posting online, stopped caring about designs. The world felt heavier, and he felt smaller. Then one afternoon his best friend Uchenna showed up uninvited, forcing the door open. Seeing Chitty sitting in the dark, surrounded by empty cups and silence, Uchenna shook his head. "My guy," he said softly, "you can't die here because someone left you. If you can design pain, make it into power." Those words hit different. Chitty looked up for the first time in days. That night, instead of drowning in memories, he opened his laptop. His hands trembled as he drew the first line on his screen. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. He poured his emotions into shapes and colors. Anger became red, sadness turned blue, hope glowed gold. He designed through the night, tears mixing with focus. For the first time since Adora left, he felt something alive again. He began watching tutorials, reading design blogs, and studying techniques from the best. He wanted to master his craft, not to prove her wrong, but to prove himself right. Sleep became rare. Passion became his food. Each project felt like therapy, each sketch like healing. Slowly, the man who once felt broken started to rebuild himself, one design at a time. When he looked at his finished artwork days later, he smiled faintly. It wasn't just a picture. It was his pain transformed into beauty. He whispered to himself, "She took my heart, but I still have my hands." That was the night Chitty decided he would never let heartbreak define him again. Chitty threw himself into work like never before. He started waking up early, hunting for freelance jobs online. Anything that could help him grow. He designed logos for small shops, posters for local events, and flyers for new restaurants. Sometimes clients didn't pay much, but he didn't care. Every design was a chance to learn. He worked from his small desk during the day and took a job at a nearby cafe at night, washing dishes and serving coffee just to afford better tools and internet data. The exhaustion was real, but so was his determination. He promised himself he would never again be the man someone looked down on. At the cafe, while others complained about long shifts, Chitty sketched ideas on napkins during breaks. He studied color theory on his phone, saved every small tip he found online, and practiced until his fingers hurt. Slowly, he started to see improvement. His designs carried emotion. Every heartbreak, every sleepless night, every ounce of passion showed in his work. One evening, he posted a few designs online with his new signature, Siwa Para. It was short, clean, and proud. People started noticing. A small clothing brand reached out for a logo. Then a bakery wanted packaging. Chitty couldn't believe strangers were now paying for his art. He spent nights perfecting every detail, imagining his work displayed everywhere. Social media began to play its part. His posts got shared, and followers trickled in. Some commented, "Who is Siapara? His designs feel alive." Those words pushed him further. Even on days he felt drained, he reminded himself why he started. When he walked past fancy cafes or saw couples holding hands, memories of Adora flashed in his mind, but instead of pain he felt fuel. He used it to push harder, to design better. He stopped seeking validation and started building a name. Months later he looked at his folder filled with completed projects, hundreds of files signed with Siapara. It wasn't just a name anymore, it was his identity. He realized he was no longer the broken man she left behind. He was an artist finding his place in the world, one design, one client, one night at a time. After months of struggle, Chitty finally got an email that made his heart race. A local beverage brand wanted him to design their new campaign. It wasn't a huge company, but for him, it was everything. He poured his soul into the project, experimenting with bold colors and emotional visuals that told a story. He stayed up nights refining every detail, determined to give them something unforgettable. When the campaign launched, people online couldn't stop talking about it. The design looked fresh, powerful, and deeply human. Within days, it went viral on social media, shared by influencers, reposted by design pages, and praised for its originality. Suddenly, Chitty's inbox was full. Restaurants wanted new menus, clothing brands asked for logos, and small startups wanted to collaborate. Each new client felt like proof that his hard work was finally paying off. His name, Siapara, started to circulate among creative circles in Abuja. Friends who hadn't spoken to him in months reached out to congratulate him. Some people even assumed he had powerful connections, but only Chitty knew it was built on sleepless nights and sacrifice. One evening, as he scrolled through his feed, he noticed something. Someone had tagged him in a post. His design had reached thousands of likes. Curious, he checked the comments, and there she was. Adora had liked the post. For a moment his chest tightened, but when he opened her profile he saw she had scrolled past it without a second thought. She probably didn't even realize it was his work. She might have assumed it was just luck, another random success story. But Chitty didn't feel bitterness, just peace. He smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. He didn't crave her validation anymore. The man who once begged for her attention now had the world's attention. He whispered to himself, "I don't need to be seen by her. I need to be seen by my purpose." That night, instead of celebrating online, he went back to work, designing another project with the same passion that had carried him through pain. For Chitty, this was only the beginning. The fire in his heart burned brighter, not for revenge, but for growth. That a year later, Chitty's life looked completely different. What began as small projects had turned into a steady stream of clients, and his online portfolio glowed with color and creativity. He didn't realize that someone far away had been quietly watching. One afternoon, while checking emails, he saw a message that made his hands shake. An American marketing firm had discovered his work online and wanted to collaborate. They wrote, "Your designs speak emotion. We'd love to work with you remotely." At first he thought it was a scam, but when they followed up with a video call, everything became real. The team was impressed by his simplicity and vision. They loved how his designs carried stories, how they felt alive. They gave him his first big contract, creating visuals for an international brand's upcoming campaign. Chitty worked day and night, balancing excitement and fear. He had never handled something this huge before, but he gave it everything. He sent draft after draft, sometimes restarting completely when he felt it wasn't perfect. His effort didn't go unnoticed. The American team praised his discipline, his creativity, and his quiet confidence. After weeks of hard work, another email came. this time an invitation. They wanted him to come to New York to finalize the campaign and witness the launch. He stared at the screen in disbelief. From a small apartment in Abuja to Times Square? It felt unreal. The flight ticket and hotel booking confirmed it wasn't a dream. When he boarded the plane, he looked out the window, remembering the days he could barely afford data to upload his designs. Arriving in New York, he felt like a different person. The city lights, the noise, the energy, everything felt like a movie. The company executives welcomed him warmly, calling him the creative mind behind the magic. Then came the announcement that nearly brought him to tears. His final design would appear on digital billboards in Times Square. As they told him, chills ran down his spine. This was it, the moment every artist dreamed of. Chidi didn't just feel proud, he felt grateful. All the pain, all the rejection, all the long nights had led him right here, to the biggest opportunity of his life. Chidi stood in the middle of Times Square, surrounded by a sea of flashing lights, towering screens, and people from all over the world. The city buzzed with energy, but in that moment, everything around him faded. His eyes locked on the massive digital billboard right in front of him. And there it was. His design. Bright, bold, and breathtaking, stretching across the screen larger than life. At the bottom in clean white letters it read, "Designed by Riva Folktales." For a second, his breath caught in his chest. He just stood there, staring, almost afraid to blink. It didn't feel real. A year ago, he had been sitting in a small apartment in Abuja, broke, heartbroken, and invisible. Now his work was lighting up one of the most famous places in the world. Strangers walked by, pointing at the billboard, admiring the design, taking pictures, and none of them knew the story behind it. The pain, the sacrifice, the nights of doubt, the heartbreak that started it all. Chidi felt tears gather in his eyes, but this time they were tears of pride. He remembered Adaora's voice echoing in his mind. "You're talented but broke. Love can't pay bills. You'll never make it." The same words that once crushed him now fueled a quiet smile on his face. He took a deep breath, letting the cold New York air fill his lungs. He whispered under his breath, "I made it without you." As the billboard changed to another image, he stepped back and looked around. People were still walking, laughing, living their lives. No one there knew how far he had come. But that was fine. This victory wasn't for the crowd, it was for him. He pulled out his phone, took a picture, and sent it to Uchenna back home with just 2 words. "We did it." In that moment, standing under the glow of his own creation, Chidi realized something powerful. Success wasn't loud. It didn't need revenge or applause. It was quiet, peaceful, and deeply personal. He smiled one more time, lifted his head toward the bright screen, and whispered, "Thank you, Pain. You were the best teacher I ever had." Back in Nigeria, the sun was high, and the city buzzed with weekend energy. Adora and her friends were at a fancy shopping mall in Abuja, trying on designer shoes and laughing loudly as music played in the background. She looked as confident as ever, her life seemingly perfect beside her rich boyfriend, Tamawa. But while she scrolled through her phone, something suddenly caught her attention. A viral post flooding every platform. The caption read, "Nigerian designer's work lights up Times Square." Out of curiosity, she tapped the video. The screen opened to a crowd in New York cheering as a massive digital billboard glowed in the background. And there it was, a beautiful campaign with a name shining beneath it in bright white letters, "Designed by Sia Para." The camera panned to show the designer himself standing in front of his work, smiling shyly as people applauded. Adaora's hand froze. Her heart dropped. It was him. Chidi. The same Chidi she had once called a dreamer who'd never go far. Her friends leaned in, screaming with excitement. "Wow. That's amazing. A Nigerian designer in Times Square? That's huge." Another friend gasped. "He's so talented. Look at that work." Adora forced a small smile, her voice shaky as she mumbled, "Yeah, it's impressive." They had no idea. None of them knew that the man the world was celebrating had once been the one she walked away from. As the video replayed, memories flashed in her mind. His small desk, his hopeful smile, his talk about making it big someday. She remembered laughing and telling him dreams didn't pay rent. Now those same dreams had taken him farther than she ever imagined. The sound of her friends talking faded as her eyes stayed fixed on his face on the screen. For the first time in a long while, Adora felt something she couldn't hide, regret. the kind that stings deep and slow. The man she left for money had built something priceless. Around her, everyone was still cheering, still proud of the Nigerian designer who made it to Times Square. But Adora stood silently, her heart sinking, realizing the truth. She had given up gold while chasing glitter. A few days after the viral post, Adora couldn't stop thinking about Chidi. His name was everywhere, blogs, social media, even the news. Every time she saw his picture, a mix of pride and shame washed over her. Late one night, unable to hold it in anymore, she opened Instagram and searched for his page. His profile was clean, filled with stunning designs, awards, and interviews. He looked different, more confident, more complete. Without overthinking, she typed, "I always believed in you." Her fingers hovered over the send button for a second before she finally hit it. Chidi saw the message the next morning while checking his notifications. For a brief moment he paused. Her name brought back old memories, late nights, laughter, and the heartbreak that once broke him. But that pain felt distant now. He smiled faintly and typed a simple reply. "Thank you. Hope you're doing well." No bitterness, no sarcasm, just peace. Then he put his phone down and went back to work. But Adora wasn't done. She sent another message the next day. "Can we meet? I'd love to talk. I made a mistake." Chidi read it quietly, then locked his phone without replying. He wasn't angry. He just didn't feel the need to reopen that chapter. He had learned that not everyone who was part of your story deserves to be part of your success. Over the next few days, she tried again, sending long messages about how proud she was and how she regretted leaving. But Chidi had outgrown the need for her validation. He had found peace in his purpose. When he finally replied, it was short and kind. "I appreciate your words, but I've moved on." Adora stared at the message, her eyes filling with tears. The man she once saw as not enough had become someone she could no longer reach. Meanwhile, Chidi looked out his hotel window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. He wasn't thinking about revenge or proving her wrong anymore. He was simply grateful for the pain, for the growth, and for the strength to walk away when the past came knocking. Some doors, he realized, are better left closed. Chidi realized that his success wasn't just for him. It was a chance to lift others who were dreaming big but struggling. He remembered the nights he had no money, no support, and no one to guide him. That memory fueled a new mission: to create opportunities for young African designers who were talented but overlooked. He founded Design Africa Rising, a platform offering mentorship, grants, and online workshops to help aspiring artists showcase their work to the world. He wanted them to know that talent combined with persistence could break boundaries, just like it had for him. Soon media outlets began noticing his work and his initiative. Interviews followed, each one asking the same question: how did a young man from Abuja go from heartbreak and struggle to having his designs displayed in Times Square? Chidi always spoke with calm confidence, sharing the story of his journey, the rejection, the long nights, and the sacrifices that shaped him. His story resonated with people everywhere. Students, young professionals, and even international creatives reached out to him, inspired by how pain had transformed into purpose. When asked what had motivated him, he often paused for a moment, letting the question sink in. Then, with a small knowing smile, he would say, "Pain is a good teacher, if you listen." It was simple, but it carried weight. Those words became his mantra, repeated in articles, podcasts, and online posts. They reminded others that failure, heartbreak, or rejection doesn't mark the end. It can be the beginning of something greater. Through his foundation, Chidi held workshops in Lagos, Abuja, and online sessions across Africa. He personally mentored designers, reviewing their portfolios, giving them advice, and connecting them to clients. The success stories began to multiply. A designer from Port Harcourt landed an international contract. Another from Nairobi had his work displayed in London. Seeing their progress, Chidi felt a quiet pride that went beyond personal fame. Even as he walked past his designs in galleries or saw his name in headlines, his focus remained on the next generation. He had turned his heartbreak into hope, his rejection into opportunity. Chidi had learned that true success wasn't just measured by billboards or recognition. It was measured by the lives you touch and the dreams you help bring to life. His journey from pain to purpose became a beacon for every young African dreaming to rise. Weeks after the Times Square campaign, Chidi's work had spread across continents. Back in Abuja, Adora strolled through a busy shopping street with her friends, trying on new shoes and laughing as if life had given her everything she wanted. The sun reflected off the polished windows of stores, and she barely noticed the crowd around her. Then, as she turned a corner, something stopped her in her tracks. A large store window displayed a new campaign, bright, bold, and unforgettable. Her eyes widened as she saw the design she instantly recognized, Chidi's work. Below the artwork, his name glowed in gold letters, designed by Siapara. She froze, the laughter of her friends fading into the background. Memories of the past, the nights they spent dreaming together, the heartbreak, the words she once said, rushed back in a torrent. The man she had left for wealth had become someone the world celebrated. She walked slowly past the window, unable to tear her eyes away. There was a strange mixture of admiration, shock, and regret in her expression. She had pursued comfort, thinking money could replace connection, but here was the proof of what she had missed. Meanwhile, Chidi's voice echoed softly in her mind, like a whisper carried from afar. Sometimes losing love is the best way to find yourself. Adaora's friends noticed her pause and asked if she was okay, but she didn't answer. For the first time, she understood that success wasn't about who she had chosen to be with. It was about the person who had refused to give up, who had turned heartbreak into purpose. She walked away, humbled and silent, carrying a lesson she would never forget. The screen in the window lingered in her vision, a quiet monument to perseverance and self-worth. The final frame showed Chidi's personal quote, shining against the vibrant design. She left for money, but I found value. It wasn't just a message to Adora, it was a declaration to the world. Chidi had transformed loss into triumph, pain into power, and heartbreak into an opportunity to rise. As she disappeared into the crowd, the window remained, glowing softly in the afternoon light. The words resonated far beyond the city street. Sometimes the end of one story is the beginning of something far greater, and the value you find in yourself can never be taken away.